What would you do if one day you found out that the people you trusted the most had stolen $350,000 from you? I've been through that feeling myself. That $350,000 was a gift from my grandmother, but I never imagined that my family members would take it just because I was away. Luckily, their actions were uncovered. And even though we share the same blood, my grandmother was determined to have them face the law. How did they manage to steal my money? And how did my grandmother punish them? Let me tell you the whole story of what happened. Hello, everyone. My name is Anna. I'm 28 years old and own a small company that makes wooden furniture in San Francisco. I worked as a sales rep for a wood products company in Seattle, Washington, a year ago. With an annual salary of just $70,000, I thought I'd be stuck in that position for at least a few more years. Every morning, I woke up feeling trapped in an endless loop. Go to work, come home, go to work again. The cramped apartment I was renting with its bare minimum of furniture was all I had to show for 4 years in Seattle. But luck decided to smile on me. On my grandmother's birthday last year, she gave me $1.6 million. That number was so far beyond anything I could have imagined. Thanks to that money, I could return to San Francisco and finally start the business I'd always dreamed of. I became my own boss from a sales rep with a blurry future. In my heart, I've always felt grateful to my grandmother for giving me the life I have today. But the people I should thank the most are my parents and older brother, because without their greed and selfishness, I never would have ended up with that money in the first place. And even though a year has passed, I can't forget the family drama of that day. The day I realized the people I trusted most could betray me in the cruelest way possible. A year ago, on my grandmother Brenda's 80th birthday, I flew from Seattle to San Francisco with one purpose in mind: to give her my birthday gift. It was a navy cashmere scarf worth nearly $500, something I had saved up for little by little. Made from premium Scottish cashmere, it had an elegant design I knew she'd love because my grandmother has always had a refined sense of style. But more than the gift, I wanted to see her again. I had missed the Christmas gathering in 2023 because I'd already promised my friends I would join them on a trip to Colorado. I didn't want to break my word to them, but that choice made me miss out on more than I realized at the time. Around 5 p.m., the taxi dropped me off in front of my grandmother's house. I was surprised to see nearly 10 cars parked outside her gate. Inside, I could hear music playing and lively conversations echoing through the warm glow from the windows, creating a vibrant atmosphere. As I took in the scene, I remembered a phone call from my mother, Helen, just 2 days before my grandmother's birthday, and something about it made me feel like she had tricked me. A quiet unease started creeping into my chest. I didn't understand what her real intention was. 2 days before my grandmother's birthday, I had just gotten back to my rented apartment after a long day at work. My phone lit up with a call from my mom right as I sank into my old, worn-out sofa. I quickly answered, thinking she was calling to ask me for a favor like she usually did. After a few questions about my job and life, my mom suddenly shifted to a serious tone and said to me, "Anna, 2 days from now is Grandma's birthday, but she's changed her plans and won't be having the party anymore. Has she told you yet?" Her words caught me off guard. My grandmother had called to invite me to her birthday party just a week earlier. Her voice had been so warm and excited. She even told me I had to come because it had been nearly a year since she last saw me. At that moment, I promised her I would rearrange my schedule so I could come early. Her voice had a certain longing that I couldn't turn down. After that call, I asked my boss for 3 days off and booked a flight from Seattle to San Francisco. I even turned down a vital client meeting to spend more time with family. Everything was set. And now here I was being told immediately that my grandmother had canceled her birthday party. After a brief pause, I asked my mom, "Do you know why Grandma canceled the party?" Without hesitation, as if reading from a script, she replied in a tone so natural it was hard to believe. "There's a flu outbreak in San Francisco right now. Grandma's worried people might get sick, so she decided to cancel." The moment she finished, I immediately asked with concern, "A flu outbreak? Are you Dad and Grandma okay?" Hearing the worry in my voice, my mom reassured me, "Everyone's fine. It's just a mild flu, nothing serious, but Grandma's getting older, so, understandably, she's being cautious." After her answer, I didn't ask anything more about the party. We chatted for another couple of minutes about small, everyday things before hanging up. Around 8 o'clock p.m., while I was having a simple dinner alone, I got text messages from my dad, Stephen, and my older brother, Derek, almost simultaneously. The messages were identical. The birthday party at Grandma's house is canceled. She's worried the flu might spread. I smiled slightly at their thoughtfulness after reading the same message from both of them. I replied, "Thanks. Mom already called to let me know earlier." After sending my reply, I thought about calling my grandmother to check on her health, but I didn't. I had already taken 3 days off and booked my flight. I decided I would still see her even if no party existed. At the time, my only thought was, at least I could spend some private time with Grandma, give her my gift, and make up for missing Christmas. I had no idea that this decision to return would pull me straight into a family drama where I would become the main character, alongside the very people I trusted most, who would also betray me cruelly. Back to my grandmother's birthday party. After recalling what my parents and older brother had told me, a wave of unease rose. The identical messages and my mother's overly natural tone when explaining the flu all felt like something planned. Still, I decided to walk into the party to see my grandmother and give her my gift. I had flown from Seattle. I couldn't just turn back now. Since it was her birthday, her house's gate and front door weren't locked. I walked right in, gift bag in hand. The moment I stepped through the gate, my cousin Olivia shouted at the top of her lungs, "Oh my God, Anna is here!" Her sudden scream startled me. Almost instantly, people began standing up and peeking out the windows. Familiar faces appeared, but I saw surprise in their expressions instead of joy. Just seconds later, my parents ran toward me faster than I had ever seen them move. Their unusual behavior only deepened my sense of unease. Grabbing my hand urgently, my mom roared, "Anna, you're here! Everyone's missed you so much!" She spoke so loudly, I was sure the neighbors could hear her. I was shocked at this display. My mom usually spoke softly, never shouting. It felt fake, like she was deliberately raising her voice so everyone inside could hear. Before I could say anything, she leaned in close and whispered hurriedly, "Anna, I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Grandma changed her mind and decided to have the party after all. Please don't be mad at me." Her whisper carried a clear note of anxiety. Right after she finished, my dad jumped in. In a softer but equally hurried tone, he said, "Your mom's right. We're sorry. We got so caught up preparing for the party that we forgot to tell you. Lucky you came." Hearing their apologies, I still had doubts but nodded anyway. I could see the tension in their eyes. Yet, I chose not to say anything more and followed them into the house. After a few steps, my grandmother was already standing in the doorway before me. The moment she saw me, she gave me her usual warm smile. She wrapped me in a hug and said in her gentle voice, "You're here. I'm so happy. I thought you wouldn't be able to make it." And once again, my mom spoke for me before I could open my mouth. She said to my grandmother, "Anna was busy, but she tried rearranging her schedule to be here." Hearing my mom's words, my grandmother didn't ask anything more. She just patted my head like she used to when I was a child, a familiar gesture that warmed my heart. Right after that, I handed her the navy cashmere scarf. She was delighted when she opened the box and saw the soft fabric. The smile on her face was genuine and bright. Seeing her smile made me happy, knowing I'd done something meaningful. And most importantly, after trying on the scarf, she decided to wear it for the entire party. Once she'd accepted my gift, we walked into the dining room together. The lively sounds of laughter and conversation and the delicious smell of food created a warm atmosphere. Still, after everything that had happened since I stepped out of the taxi, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling caused by my parents' strange behavior. They kept cutting me off as if they were afraid I might say something wrong. The way they whispered their apologies and explained things so hurriedly, none of it was normal. Even though I was suspicious, I kept quiet. I decided to stay silent and watch what they did next. Something wasn't right here, and I needed to find out what it was. When I entered the dining room, my parents asked Derek, my older brother, to move to another seat so I could take his place. Hearing this request, Derek looked a bit surprised but stood up reluctantly. He moved to a table nearby with a less than pleased expression on his face. I sat in the middle with my parents on either side like bodyguards. My mom smiled and said in a tender voice, "It's been so long since I've seen you, so today I want you to sit close to me." At the time, I thought she truly missed me. The way she arranged the seating seemed like her way of making up for the time we'd spent apart, but her real intention was to keep me under control to ensure she could step in and manage anything I said. When I sat down, my Uncle Mike, my dad's younger brother, handed me a glass of red wine and eagerly helped fill my plate with food. He had always been the most genuinely friendly person in the family with a smile that never felt fake. Olivia, his daughter, started asking me about my life and work in Seattle with questions like, "Anna, how's work in Seattle? Do you like living there? Are you planning to stay long term?" I answered her questions naturally, discussing my job, city life, and plans. The cheerful atmosphere of the party made me momentarily forget everything that had happened earlier. The sound of laughter, the smell of delicious food, and the genuine care from some of my relatives warmed my heart. Most importantly, I was there on this special day for my grandmother. Seeing her wearing the scarf I gave her made me feel happy, sure that I had made the right decision in flying back for her party. That night, nearly 20 people were at my grandmother's birthday party. Besides my family and Uncle Mike's family, some distant relatives lived and worked in San Francisco. Aunt Linda, my dad's cousin, Tom, my cousin from Oakland, and a few of Grandma's longtime friends. My grandmother ordered food from an Italian restaurant less than a mile from her house to save time and effort. Plates of pasta, fresh bread, salads, and most impressive of all, a beautifully decorated 3-tier birthday cake filled the table. Seeing everyone chatting and laughing along with my grandmother's warm smile and the sparkle in her eyes as she looked at her loved ones gathered around her, I thought this would be a proper family celebration, a beautiful memory I would always keep of her 80th birthday. I didn't know that a family drama was about to erupt in her home in just a few minutes, and it would also be the first time in my life I would witness my grandmother, the same gentle, patient woman who had always been kind, even when we broke things or misbehaved. As kids, lose her temper completely. Around 8 p.m., after everyone had finished the main courses and dessert was served, Uncle Mike turned the music down to the lowest volume so Grandma could talk more easily with everyone. The atmosphere grew quieter and people focused on listening to her. This was always a special moment in our family gatherings when Grandma would share stories or check in on each person individually. Turning to Olivia, she asked in a caring tone, "Olivia, what did you do with my money?" Hearing the question, Olivia quickly set down the bite of cake she was eating. She looked a little shy at suddenly becoming the center of attention and replied, "I haven't used that money. Still in my savings account." Grandma nodded with satisfaction and said, "Good, you know how to save." At that point, I guessed Olivia must have received a lot of money from Grandma, but I didn't feel any jealousy. My outlook on life had always been that I should be independent, earn money, and never rely on anyone else. I had always been proud of that, no matter how hard life got. But I started paying closer attention when Grandma turned to Derek, my older brother, and asked in the same caring tone, "And what about you, Derek?" The moment she finished speaking, I froze. That was when I first realized Grandma had given Derek money. I had never heard a word about it before. Never had Derek or my parents mentioned it in any phone call or text. When I glanced at my mom and dad, they looked unusually uneasy. My dad kept clasping his hands together and rubbing them repeatedly, while my mom kept covering her mouth with her hand. Their behavior was completely different from their relaxed attitude throughout the party. I wasn't angry, but I did feel a little sad, knowing that both Olivia and my brother had received money from Grandma while I hadn't. Maybe it was because I lived far away and didn't visit often, so Grandma hadn't considered me. Or maybe she figured I was old enough to take care of myself. I didn't know that I had a share too, and it had been stolen from me most cruelly by the very people I loved most. While I was still lost in the sadness of feeling overlooked, Grandma turned her gaze toward me. Her eyes were as gentle as always when she asked, "Anna, what did you do with the $350,000 I gave you?" I gave. Her question left me completely frozen. I just sat there, mouth slightly open, unable to speak. She was talking about $350,000, an enormous amount I had never heard of before. This wasn't some small gift. This was the kind of money that could change a life. My thoughts started spinning. I wondered if Grandma was mistaken. Maybe she had given someone else $350,000 and somehow thought it was me. Or perhaps with her age, her memory wasn't always accurate. I was just about to open my mouth to explain this possible misunderstanding when suddenly my mother grabbed my hand under the table and squeezed it hard. The grip was so firm it hurt, like an urgent warning. Startled by my mom's unusual action, I turned to look at her. Her face was pale, beads of sweat forming on her forehead. She forced a tight, uncomfortable smile, then answered, "Grandma, Anna hasn't used that money yet." Her response hit me like a shockwave. My mind went into overdrive trying to process what I just heard. That painful grip under the table, her forced answer. They told me everything. My mother knew about this money. She knew exactly about the $350,000 I had never been told existed, and maybe she had taken it on my behalf. But why? For what purpose? And why was I kept in the dark? Those questions kept firing in my mind one after another before I could figure out how to handle the situation. Grandma suddenly spoke up, her voice firm and loud. "I'm asking Anna, not you." Her tone was nothing like the gentle way she usually spoke. There was a decisiveness and sharp authority in her voice that I had rarely seen. When she said that, my mother fell silent and lowered her head like a scolding child. I could feel the hand gripping mine under the table shaking violently. Her palm was sweaty, and that fear radiated straight into me. Then Grandma fixed her eyes directly on mine, her gaze demanding an answer, and said, "Anna, answer me now. What did you do with that money?" Her voice was commanding, leaving no room for hesitation. I realized she was deadly serious and wanted to hear the truth straight from my mouth. At that point, I didn't hesitate anymore. I yanked my hand free from my mother's trembling grasp, ignoring her silent protest. I stood up, looked Grandma straight in the eye, and asked, "What $350,000? I've never even known about that money." My response seemed to suck all the air out of the room. Grandma stared at me with shock and confusion, as if she couldn't believe what she'd heard. Right then, I knew my parents were behind that missing money. The pieces had all fallen into place. I thought Grandma would tell them to return it. Maybe there'd be a small family argument, but things would end peacefully. I had no idea I was about to witness the full force of my grandmother's anger, something I had never seen in all my life, not even when we broke her belongings or misbehaved as kids. While everyone was still glancing at each other in confusion, Grandma suddenly shouted, her voice full of fury, "Stephen, what did you do with Anna's money?" When those words hit the air, my heart felt like it stopped. I saw my parents' faces change completely. My father's face went pale, his trembling hands resting on the table. My mother looked even worse. She pulled out a handkerchief to cover her face, her shoulders shaking uncontrollably. They didn't answer her question. Seeing their refusal to respond, Grandma turned to Uncle Mike and roared, "Mike, call the police for me." Hearing that, Uncle Mike looked up in shock and asked, "You're not serious, are you? You want the police here?" Grandma replied with firm resolve, "Yes, right now." The moment the word police was spoken, my parents shot up from their seats like they'd been jolted with electricity. They rushed over to where Grandma was sitting and dropped to their knees. The sight broke my heart. In a trembling voice, my father pleaded, "Mom, please don't call the police. We'll return the money." Felt like I was living in a nightmare. Through her tears, my mother said to Grandma, "That's right, Mom. We were wrong." At their pleas, Grandma let out a heavy sigh and said, "It's too late. The one thing I hate most is a thief. You stole the money I gave to Anna." Hearing her accuse them outright, my father suddenly shouted back, "We didn't steal it. I just borrowed that money." That stubborn answer made anger rise in my chest. How could my dad still argue in this situation? His response only fueled Grandma's rage. She yelled, "Borrowed? Anna didn't even know about the $350,000. If I hadn't asked today, you would have kept quiet and taken it for yourselves, right?" Even then, my father refused to admit fault fully. He said to her, "Anna is my daughter. I have the right to decide for her." Hearing that, I instinctively stepped back, my mind scrambling to process what I just heard. Uncle Mike couldn't hold back anymore and shouted, "Shut up, Stephen, you're wrong." In that moment, I realized it wasn't just me. The entire family could see how wrong my parents were. 20 minutes later, the police arrived at Grandma's house. After she gave them a brief account of what had happened, the officers asked us to come down to the station to provide our statements. At the station, the whole and brutal truth came out. During Christmas 2023, Grandma had given her grandchildren a large sum of money to help them build their careers. It was her way of investing in our futures, hoping it would provide us a better life and financial independence. Her 3 grandchildren, me, Olivia, and Derek, were each given the same amount, $350,000. For young people like us, it was an enormous sum. Grandma had recently sold part of her farm to generate the money. She had to sell because no family member would return to work the land. The younger generation wanted to live in the city. chasing modern careers, and the family farm had slowly become a burden instead of a source of income. I couldn't make it home that Christmas because I had already planned a trip with friends, something we'd arranged far in advance and promised to join. I assumed it was just another Christmas, never realizing I was missing an event that could have changed my life. Even though I wasn't there, Grandma had told everyone she would contact me later and send me the money, but my parents quietly stopped her from doing that. They gave her my bank account information, or so she thought. The receipt for the transfer was still tucked neatly in her purse, proof of the trust she'd placed in our family. But instead of giving her the account I used daily, they gave her a different one. It was an account I had given my mom access to 2 years earlier when she needed to deal with a financial emergency. Her account had a technical issue at the time and couldn't be used for a few days. I gave her my details so she could use them temporarily, trusting her completely like any child trusts their mother because that account was still in my name and they still had full access. They used it to trick Grandma into sending the money there. It was a carefully planned move, exploiting her trust and my lack of knowledge about what was happening. Once the bank confirmed the account was active, Grandma made the transfer immediately. She forgot to follow up and asked me whether I'd received the money, something she usually would have done. She later explained that her age and fading memory sometimes caused her to miss little details. As for my parents, after receiving the $350,000, they handed all of it to Derek so he could invest in a stock that was supposedly on the rise, hoping it would triple in value within a year. They thought they could make a massive profit before I found out. It was a high-risk decision based on rumors and unreliable advice. With limited investment experience, Derek believed promises of significant returns without truly understanding the risks. That stock's value had collapsed catastrophically, down to just 1/10 of what they paid for it. My $350,000 was now worth only about $35,000. The money Grandma had saved and sacrificed her property to give me had vanished into thin air. Listening to their statements at the police station, I felt my heart shatter. Not just because of the money, but because of the betrayal from the people I trusted most. After all the formalities at the police station were done, I decided to expose the lie they had told Grandma about canceling the party. I took out my phone and showed her the messages my parents and Derek had sent me. Grandma was utterly shocked when she read identical texts about canceling the party because of a flu outbreak. Her eyes widened, her face slowly drained of color. Her hands trembled as she held my phone, reading the words repeatedly as if she couldn't believe them. Her breathing grew quick and shallow, like someone had just been punched in the chest. She looked straight at my parents and Derek, her eyes filled with disappointment and fury, now cold and unyielding. Her voice was nothing like her usual gentle tone. She told them, "From this moment on, we are no longer family." That devastating declaration broke all three of them instantly. My father burst into tears like a child, his face contorted with grief. My mother covered her face and sobbed uncontrollably, her body shaking. Derek stood frozen like a statue, pale-faced, his lips trembling, unable to speak. They all rushed toward her, begging. My parents and Derek grabbed her hands, desperately trying to hold on to some family connection, but she pushed them away firmly without a hint of hesitation. Then she said, her voice like ice, "I will revise my will. You are all removed from the inheritance." Those words landed like a death sentence. My father fell to the floor, pleading for her forgiveness. My mother cried so hard she could barely breathe. Derek stood still, but I saw tears fall from his eyes. After that, I drove Grandma home in silence. The whole ride, she didn't say a single word. Her face was cold, but I knew her heart was breaking. That night, when we arrived at her house, she asked me to take an extra 4 days off work. Her voice was tired, yet resolute. I didn't know exactly what she had in mind, but the determination in her eyes was evident. I nodded without asking any questions. I knew she was preparing for something important. Maybe the will change she had mentioned, or other decisions about the family's future. Whatever it was, I would be there for her during these difficult days. After everything that had happened, I understood one thing. Our family would never be the same again. The trust was gone forever, and the consequences of their actions would last for the rest of our lives. 2 days later, my parents, Derek, and Uncle Mike's family were called to Grandma's house. The atmosphere in the familiar living room was tense and heavy, a stark contrast to the birthday party just days earlier. There, with the presence of attorney Laura, a woman in her 50s, dressed in a sharp black suit and carrying an elegant leather briefcase. Grandma formally announced her decision to amend her will. The moment the announcement was made, my father began to tremble. He lowered his head, his hands clasped so tightly that his knuckles turned white. My mother sat beside him, her face pale, her eyes red and swollen from nights of crying. Derek sat in the corner, avoiding everyone's gaze, his face noticeably more drawn than it had been 2 days before. Attorney Laura opened her briefcase, took out the legal documents, and then read Grandma's decision. My parents' and Derek's inheritance shares would be transferred entirely to me after her passing. Uncle Mike's family would keep their share as it was with the remaining assets, including the farm, the house, and several other valuable holdings. It was estimated that Uncle Mike's family and I would split no less than $3 million. Hearing this, my father suddenly stood up and tried to beg Grandma to change her mind. My mother broke down, sobbing and pleading for forgiveness. Derek was utterly crushed, holding his head in his hands, trembling. But Grandma just sat still, her face like stone, unmoved by their pleas. At the same time, she gave my parents 30 days to return the $350,000 they had taken from me. An incredibly short deadline, especially knowing that nearly all of it was gone after their failed stock investment. Attorney Laura, acting on Grandma's authority, stated that she would file a legal demand in court to ensure they received formal notice. The mention of legal action left my parents stunned. They realized they were losing their inheritance and facing potentially serious legal consequences. While the three of them sat in shock, Uncle Mike spoke up, his voice thick with anger, saying it was precisely what greedy people deserved. Sitting beside her father, Olivia nodded in agreement, her eyes filled with disappointment as she looked at Derek and my parents. Grandma then explained that she had given them love and opportunity, but they had betrayed and deceived her. Now they would have to face the consequences of their actions. The entire room fell into heavy silence. My parents and Derek sat like statues, fully aware they had lost everything, from the love of the family to their financial future. Attorney Laura announced that the legal paperwork would be sent to their address within 48 hours. After the lawyer left, Uncle Mike and Olivia said their goodbyes, leaving us in that heavy atmosphere. Looking at my parents and Derek in complete collapse, part of me felt guilty. But another part of me believed this was the justice they had brought upon themselves. In that moment, I understood that my life had changed forever. From an ordinary employee in Seattle, I was now set to become an heir to part of my grandmother's fortune, a massive inheritance I had never dreamed of. A month later, my parents and Derek were forced to sell the house they were living in to come up with the $350,000 they owed me. It was a 2-story home in a good neighborhood in San Francisco, where I had spent my childhood and early years. My parents bought it 20 years ago, and it has countless family memories. Selling the house was not an easy decision for them. They had to accept a price lower than market value to sell quickly and meet the repayment deadline. The process was rushed, leaving them no time to find the best buyer or negotiate a better deal. On top of the repayment, I also received an additional $35,000 in interest calculated at the market rate for personal loans, thanks to Attorney Laura. This was compensation for the fact that I had been deprived of using my own money when they took it. Surprisingly, I didn't feel sad when they sold the house I grew up in. That house was once the backdrop to my childhood, where I studied, played, and grew up. But after everything that had happened, I realized those fond memories had been clouded by the betrayal of the people who had created them. Maybe this was a sign that I had grown up, that I now understood actual value isn't found in material things, but in honesty and trust. A house is just bricks and mortar, but the damage done to family bonds can't be repaired. After recovering the stolen money, Grandma made another decision that surprised me. She decided to sell the remaining part of the family farm for $2.4 million. This was the last portion of land she still owned after having sold part of it earlier to give money to her grandchildren. Letting go of the farm wasn't easy for her. It was a family legacy passed down through generations, a place tied to the memories of her entire life. But she said she wanted to convert the assets into cash to simplify division and management. The $2.4 million was split evenly between me and Uncle Mike's family. I received $1.2 million, an enormous amount I had never dared to imagine. Uncle Mike's family received the same share, a reward for the loyalty and genuine affection they had shown Grandma all these years. At that point, I now had nearly $1.6 million, the original $350,000, the $35,000 in interest, and $1.2 million from the farm sale. It was enough to make every dream I'd ever had a reality. My gratitude toward Grandma grew even deeper. She hadn't just given me financial stability, she had taught me invaluable lessons about honesty, fairness, and courage. She showed me that sometimes standing up for what's right, even when it hurts, is necessary. Grandma had become my hero, not because of the money she gave me, but because she taught me how to live with principles and values. With $1.6 million, I fulfilled my long-held dream, opening a wooden furniture manufacturing company in San Francisco. This wasn't an impulsive move, but the result of years of working in the industry and gaining deep insight into the market. Here's part 6, continuing Anna's story. I spent 2 months searching for the correct location for my workshop. After surveying multiple sites, I decided to lease a 5,000 square foot warehouse in the city's southern industrial district. The area was ideal for receiving raw materials and delivering finished products to customers. The initial investment was significant. I purchased specialized machinery, saws, planers, drills, and a modern dust extraction system. The total cost for equipment and workshop renovations reached $400,000. On top of that, I stocked up on high-quality wood from trusted suppliers. I hired 5 experienced carpenters and 2 office staff to handle orders and customer service. I offered salaries higher than the market average to attract the best talent in the industry. My business strategy focused on premium quality and unique designs. Instead of competing on price with large manufacturers, I targeted high-income customers who valued aesthetics and fine craftsmanship. Within 6 months of operation, the company had already turned a profit. Our first products, dining tables, bookshelves, and bed frames, received overwhelmingly positive customer feedback. I felt proud knowing that Grandma's gift didn't just change my life, it also created jobs and opportunities for others. A year had passed since the family drama erupted, and my life had changed completely, all for the better. My furniture company was thriving. We had expanded operations, hired more employees, and secured major contracts from upscale hotels and restaurants in the area. I bought a small house just a minute's drive from Grandma's place. The decision wasn't just for business convenience, but also so I could take better care of her. At 81, she needed family nearby in case she ever required help. Life for my parents had grown much harder over the past year. After selling the San Francisco house, they couldn't afford to buy another in the area. They moved to Oregon, where the cost of living was lower, and were now renting a small house in the suburbs of Portland. My father, nearly 60, had to look for a new job. No easy task in a competitive job market. My mother worked part-time at a grocery store to help make ends meet. Derek also moved with them to Oregon. He had lost his previous job and was now working as a technician for a small company, earning a modest salary. His once luxurious lifestyle was long gone. Grandma, at 81, was still healthy and sharp-minded. She seemed more at ease now that those who had betrayed her were no longer part of her life. She often said she felt relieved not to worry about schemes or lies anymore. Living nearby meant I could visit her often for dinner, conversation, and companionship. These evenings became the most treasured moments of my week. Grandma shared life lessons, family stories, and valuable advice for running my business. Family gatherings now were just me, Grandma, and Uncle Mike's family. Olivia, in her final year of college, came home on weekends. Uncle Mike and Aunt Linda were as warm as ever, always bringing delicious food when they visited. Though the gatherings were much smaller than before, they were warmer and more genuine. There was no deceit, no fake smiles, no double talk. Everyone was sincere, sharing both joys and struggles openly. I realized that sometimes losing people who don't deserve to be in your life makes you appreciate even more those who truly matter. Our small family now might not be large in number, but it was strong, close-knit, and filled with love. That's where my story ends. When I shared it with people I know, some said my grandmother did the right thing. They believe liars deserve to face the consequences of their actions, and that her decisiveness was necessary to teach greedy, dishonest people a lesson they would never forget. But others think she took it too far by removing them from her will. They argue that no matter what happened, my parents and Derek were still family, and cutting them off completely might have been too harsh. Some feel she could have allowed them to make things right instead of severely punishing them. What about you? What do you think of my grandmother's decision? Was she right to act so firmly, or did she go too far in punishing those who betrayed her trust? Share your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your perspective on what my family went through. Every point of view helps me understand this situation more deeply. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it so more people can listen and reflect. Thank you for following along with my story.